Hello, everybody. We're back with another episode. And today, one thing that I'm actually quite excited to learn about this for me to connect some dots as well, is to when you're talking about authentic alignment, not authentic alignment, but magnetic masculinity, there's like two parts of it. We discovered or talked a bit more about authentic alignment, authentic and inauthentic self in last episode. But can you talk a bit more about the other thing that is kind of playing a big role in getting to that magnetic masculinity?
Yes, you're referring to the vehicle of consciousness metaphor I created?
Yes.
Yes. So basically, what I'm trying to do is provide mind or thought models for my clients so that we can more quickly have metaphorical alignment, which allows us to diagnose and repair. And in the future, my clients to independently diagnose or repair when something is off in either their physical, mental, emotional being. So we talked about the authentic alignment, and the vehicle of consciousness is a metaphor that I use to help us understand the multidimensionality of being in a human experience, but also how to separate out different parts of our body so that we can start to think of ourselves a little bit like we would something that's very easy for us to relate to, like a vehicle. So when we get a new car, we're given an owner's manual, we're taught how everything runs, we take care of it properly. Well, sometimes we take care of it properly if we prefer that it lasts longer. And understanding that those different systems in the vehicle kind of all have their own individual purposes and needs, but they all also need to work together in order for you to be able to pilot or drive that vehicle skillfully. So the vehicle of conscious metaphor, and I would like this to be valid for anybody of any religious or non-religious belief system. So whether you believe you're a soul from God, whether you believe that you are just living in a third dimensional body, if you believe in Allah, whatever you believe in, I think we can all agree that we are currently, whatever we is, living in a body and understanding how to work that body, understanding, getting a little bit of an owner's manual on how to have a human experience is helpful. So I call it the vehicle of consciousness because for me, consciousness sort of includes any one of the scientific or religious metaphors, which are all valid. And I want it to be inclusive of all. So in this vehicle of consciousness, if we think of ourselves or a soul temporarily, because we all are born and we all die, that's something else we can all agree upon. While we're in this vehicle, understanding how to pilot it really effectively can help us understand, again, how to diagnose and repair when something goes wrong. And it's not a perfect metaphor, but it's effective. And it also, when we talk about the navigation of the emotions, it also piloting our vehicle of consciousness correctly allows us to more quickly and effectively find our authentic alignment and understand when we're slightly out of alignment. And then we can assess the different areas or the different systems to see which one is letting us know that something wants our attention or awareness. So, our vehicle of consciousness. We are souls living in a body, and I call the brain the supercomputer. So if you're in a vehicle, the computer kind of runs everything, doesn't it? You need the computer. The computer helps all of the different components speak to each other. And if you have outdated software, or the computer is malfunctioning, or it's running too many tabs open, a computer does not work effectively. So a lot of us have that old programming in our software or our computer that's a little bit outdated. So one of the things we can learn to do is effectively manage and do some tech support and programming of our supercomputer so that it's running with maximum efficacy. Now, you can probably think of a habit or a behavior or a thought or a pattern in your life that is effortless. like brushing your teeth now. You are programmed to get up and do that in the morning. You might also have a program of beating yourself up or thinking you're stupid or feeling not good enough. You don't have to try to think you're not good enough. That software just runs continuously. So we can start to look at how to remove old software that no longer serves us, how to install really helpful, effective, energizing, positive software, and also assess what software might just need a little OS update. And we can also learn how to fuel that computer, what it needs, how to fuel our brain so that it's running really effectively, because without the computer, nothing runs. Now, the body, I call the engine of the vehicle, loosely. And what I mean by that is that we want it to have a full tank of gas, because if it's out of gas, it's not going to go anywhere. And it requires proper maintenance and the right level of fluids and the right amount of spark plugs or whatever it needs. And if we were putting, say, low octane fuel in the gas tank, or the gas tank was empty, then the vehicle would not run as effectively for as long. So we want to put premium fuel in. We want to make sure that the oil's topped up, that our fluids are topped up, and that it's maintained. Now, so that's our nutrition, that's our sleep, that's our how to make sure that we have a full tank of gas, because as we know from quantum physics, we are made out of energy. So as bodies made out of energy, we know that if we have very low units of energy or no energy, how can we possibly expect ourselves to do things that require energy? So if we wake up in the morning with only 5 units of energy, and going to work costs 20 units of energy, and being a parent costs 15 units of energy, and going to the gym costs 20 units of energy, and you only have 5, the gas tank is empty, you can't really expect yourself to do much. And then maybe the old glitchy software in the mind will make up, the software in the computer will start making up stories about you're lazy or you're not good enough or whatever, and then both of those systems can kind of not be running optimally. But now, no matter how much premium fuel is in the gas tank, and no matter how well that engine is maintained, if the battery is dead, the vehicle's not running. And your heart is the battery. So we also want to make sure that our heart is able, that electromagnetic field that we can produce with our heart, we want to make sure that that battery is charged. And like we talked about in a previous episode, love and belonging is the #1 biological need of the human species. And a lot of us, because we're evolving out of the emotional dark ages and we're all doing our best, so there's no blame, a lot of our emotional needs were not met in childhood or are continuously not being met in adulthood. And eventually, and we have these emotional wounds and we put up these little barriers and we make assumptions, and we aren't taught how to have that emotional connection, especially men, then eventually that battery starts to get corroded. And sort of getting that battery online and getting that intuition, that's also where our intuition comes from. Getting that intuition online, getting that battery charged so that the engine has got a full tank of gas, the computer software is running really efficiently, and the battery is fully charged, then we're great. And then the last component is the navigation system in that vehicle. And that navigation system are your emotions. Emotions are your navigation system. And a lot of men, now again, a lot of women as well in society are emotionally underskilled. But men have been we've done an especially big disservice to men on the planet by sort of forcing them to shut down their emotional navigation system in childhood. And then we put them in relationships with themselves and others and expect them to meet others' emotional needs and have others meet their emotional needs. It's like we've literally disconnected the emotional navigation system. And then we're like, well, what's wrong? Why are they off course? Well, and then men are also over time learn to be uncomfortable with those emotions. So they might find ways to suppress those emotions, which means they're not able to use those healthy, fabulous, valid emotions as they're meant to be as a navigation system or a guidance system. And this one can be very challenging and very rewarding for men to do a little bit of work, so that, again, those emotions can constantly give us feedback or KPIs of what we're doing, if it's in our authentic alignment or not. And also learning, getting that emotional navigation system online often involves releasing a lot of old stored emotions and learning how to feel emotions and learning how to identify emotions without making others responsible for them or taking them out on people. And when we master that skill and we get that emotional navigation system calibrated, and men give themselves permission to feel the whole spectrum of emotions, because emotions are a package deal. If we're not willing to feel the ones that we judge or that are uncomfortable, like fear, shame, sadness, jealousy, pity, whatever it is, self-pity, if we don't give ourselves permission to feel those emotions fully, we sort of cut ourselves off from the polarity or opposite of those emotions, which are the ones we really prefer, like joy and excitement and abundance and bliss and sensuality. And so if we're just sort of suppressing most emotions, then life kind of feels more like this, instead of getting to feel these amazing highs, and over time, less lows or emotions that we judge, which really emotions are fairly neutral. It's mostly our judgment of the emotion or our fear of the emotion that makes them more unpleasant than they need to be. So yeah, that's sort of the vehicle of consciousness. So your brain is the supercomputer, and we need the computer to run. Your body is the engine, and it needs premium fuel, a full tank of gas, or we need to know how to fill the gas tank, and we need to know what drains the gas tank. And we also need to make sure it has all the right little fluids and all of the little connectors are properly connected, and how to keep that running. And that's our bodies. And then again, our heart is the battery. And when that heart is functioning well, which is very closely connected to the emotional navigation system, because again, all of these systems, same as in a vehicle or a car, these are very connected systems. But if we at least have that metaphorical alignment, we can start to look and more quickly be able to figure out what's not running optimally and how to get the whole system back online so that you can pilot this vehicle of consciousness effectively, continuously more and more towards your authentic alignment. And when you're piloting that vehicle of consciousness effectively and you're energized and you know how to program your brain to run very efficient programs that are very helpful and energizing, and your heart battery is charged, and that electromagnetic field and that intuition is online, and you're full of energy and you understand your emotions, and you're constantly calibrating towards your authentic alignment, you become magnetic. And that is what I call magnetic masculinity. When you have clarity, not perfection, but you have emotional mastery, you have some clarity, you have confidence, you have self-acceptance, compassion, and you're living in ways that make you feel amazing. So does that answer your question?
Oh, that's definitely much more clear now. I would have a question about, so let's say these systems, they work in alignment, but at the same time, let's say, I think a lot of times we tend to go to conclusions that if something is wrong, then all the systems must be off, or, we jump to those conclusions that everything must be wrong. And now, even if we start to think about working on them or like fixing them, that it becomes like super overwhelming. So like the question would be, how do we identify what actually is that missing link or something that we need to work on, instead of jumping to conclusions that if something doesn't feel right, now everything must be like wrong?
Well, I think first of all, having that awareness is helpful. So if you had awareness that, hey, it's empowering that I can now sort of look at the different systems and try to figure out, you know, how to optimize. I call this our avatar that we're living in, or the vehicle of consciousness. I call it avatar optimization. So I figure out, I just sort of maybe take some time to look at the software of the brain. What is the software? What are the limiting beliefs? What are the automatic habits, programs, behaviors? How is my nutrition? What am I doing that's providing me energy? What am I doing that's draining my energy? Am I getting my emotional needs met? Do I have connection? Do I have self-compassion? Do I have the things that gets my battery, my heart battery charged? And then my emotions, that learning to feel the emotions, I think we can do it proactively, or we can wait until something is so painful we have to figure out where the pain is coming from. But at least that gives us more of a chance. Again, it's just metaphors. So it just gives us that sort of mind model that allows us to not make a bunch of conclusions, I think. Instead, it empowers us to say, okay, which system might it be? Let's use, say, depression as an example. And again, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm somewhat oversimplifying for the sake of metaphorical alignment, and depression is something I am using because it's something I have had a lot of experience with in my life. So if we're experiencing what we might call depression, we could look at, is this because my emotional needs aren't being met? Is this my emotional navigation system telling me that I'm in a job that I don't like, in a relationship that's unfulfilling, that I'm lonely, that I'm separated from my authentic self? Because that can cause depression, because that's like the ultimate separation. Like we talked about love and belonging, that love and belonging needs to be within the parts of yourself first. So that separation itself could cause what we perceive as depression. Or it could be that there's no fuel in the tank. So we're literally just a vehicle made out of energy, and there's no energy left. So that could feel maybe like depression. Or maybe there's a chemical malfunction, like you've been exposed to a lot of lawn chemicals or toxic heavy metals, or something that is causing a biochemical or electrical malfunction in that vehicle. And that could be something that we perceive as depression, or it could be a combination. So it at least sort of gives us that groundwork that I think can help us look at all the different systems instead of thinking of ourselves as sort of more linear, third-dimensional beings, because there can be many different causes for the same set of what we would call symptoms.
So with each of those systems, understanding what they are is really helpful. And I think going even a step further, you mentioned that each of them are charged by certain things. How can we, maybe you can explain a bit deeper, what are those things and how we can, because I think understanding what is charging them can help us to identify better whether they are in a good place, or maybe they need to be charged a bit more.
Yeah. Well, I think charged is one aspect, but even if, say, the brain, the supercomputer, is really charged, is it running programs that are helpful for your alignment and your magnetic masculinity, or is it running programs like you're not good enough, you're a failure, nobody cares about you, nobody appreciates you, let's eat pizza and drink beer, which there's nothing wrong with pizza and
so
beer.
It's also
there's
like
absolutely nothing wrong with it, but you can at least assess if it's and then in our body we can look at what is providing us units of energy, both physically, mentally, and emotionally, and what is draining, and socially, and what is draining that gas tank. And am I consuming foods that provide units of energy and provide glucose to my brain and provide me with all the things I need? Or am I choosing foods, which again, there's no shame in food. Food addictions are real. I have overcome many habits, patterns, behaviors, and addictions in my life, and food was by far one of the hardest. So I just want to say that there's no shame in food. So it's not about beating ourselves up, but it's, at one point I just started asking myself, is this food that I'm consuming going to provide me units of energy like food is supposed to? Or is it going to require a lot of units of energy? Is it going to fill the gas tank, or is it draining the gas tank? because it takes so many units of energy in my body to separate out those fats and process fat and sugar at the same time and get rid of the canola oil and protect my organs from the, from the chemicals and MSG and high sodium and high sugar and all of the things that actually require units of energy rather than provide units of energy. And then as far as the heart, are we getting our emotional needs met? And do we have love and belonging not only externally in our external reality, but from within the parts of ourselves? And that's, again, whether we're in our conditioned self or our self-concept and our authentic self and our authentic alignment. So if we have parts of ourselves that we don't look at because they don't fit our self-concept, or like, oh, I'm a tough woman, I don't have any soft romantic parts, which is not true, but I did used to believe that. I sort of felt drained because I was never allowing my authentic parts to really come out and play. So that can be draining. And then looking at our emotional navigation system, a lot of men, again, have not been taught, allowed, or accepted for having a full spectrum of emotions. So a metaphor that I heard once that I really like is it's like having an emotion is like an inflated beach ball. And when a beach ball hits water, it kind of will float away along the surface, right? And that's how emotions are. They can be big, they can whatever, but they will eventually dissipate. But if we take that beach ball and we push it under the water, and we take another beach ball and we push it underwater, think about how much energy it requires to hold an inflated beach ball underwater. Well, many men have hundreds or thousands of these emotional beach balls that they've been taught to suppress, that over time, that's exhausting, that's draining, right? So that's not providing units of energy. And then we're not looking at what those emotions, what that emotional feedback, what those KPIs were of what we were doing in that time and the information that those valuable emotions were communicating to us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting how there's so many, in a way, like many things to navigate, or we try to navigate, and even like in so many ways we make things harder for ourselves, even with trying to keep those beach balls down. Maybe as we close off, can you maybe bring together that equation of magnetic masculinity and how does the vehicle of consciousness fits into it?
So again, the conditioned masculinity is how you know, and again, remember, these are all just metaphors. So these are just ways that we can more quickly find mental alignment so that we can diagnose, repair, and maximize our experience, or read that owner's manual on how to thrive in your human experience while you're in this vehicle of consciousness. So magnetic masculinity is when a man is empowered, inspired, emotionally skillful, getting his needs met in relationships. He is skillful at communicating. He understands his wants, needs, boundaries, and values. He's living in authentic alignment. So all of those parts of him are getting their needs met, and he's self-aware, and he's integrating his blind spots and living in a way that feels fulfilling for him. And the other aspect of that is the vehicle of consciousness. So again, just being able to look at those different systems of this vehicle so that you're reading the owner's manual so that you're able to pilot this vehicle of consciousness. Because I often say either you master your mind or your mind is mastering you. You train your brain or your brain is training you. And then it's more like we're strapped in to this vehicle and it's taking us all over the place and it's taking us off road and it's exhausted and we're just like, and then we're just kind of like along for the ride rather than becoming empowered to pilot that vehicle of consciousness with skill and being able to look at all those different components so that we can be empowered to pilot ourselves back into that magnetic masculinity.
Oh, I love that.
And that's that clarity, confidence, emotional mastery, skillful at relationships, willing to make mistakes, self-compassionate, emotionally masterful. Not perfect, just empowered. And it's when we're not empowered and we don't understand how those systems work, and we don't choose the software, because most of the software in that vehicle was programmed for us before the age of 7. And it just runs over and over and over. And those neural pathways get stronger and stronger and stronger. And when that we've been forced to drain or shut down or disconnect that battery, and we're not entirely sure how to make sure we have that full tank of gas and tons of energy to spend, and then our emotional navigation system guiding us towards that authentic alignment. Yeah.
I love that.
And when we have that empowerment or that owner's manual, then it's a lot easier and logical for men to be able to more quickly diagnose and repair when something is not going well.
There's like, in a way, less delay into getting back to that
clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or at least trying, at least knowing, okay, well, I'm going to try this. That didn't work.
Like
sometimes
having more tools.
Trial and errors. Yeah.
Okay. Anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Well,
maybe some action steps.
They could definitely click on the link in the show notes. And I do offer free strategy sessions where we map out your unique magnetic masculinity blueprint. And whether we decide that we're a fit to work together in a client relationship or not, my goal in those sessions is to provide as much value and clarity as I possibly can. Because as you know, one of my goals is in the magnetic masculinity movement is to help 1 million men heal. And even in that 1 hour time slot, I have had people have epiphany after epiphany after epiphany. I have a workbook that is filled out before our time together, which allows me to more quickly diagnose and repair. And because I've worked on so many vehicles of consciousness, I am like a master mechanic, so I can very quickly figure out which parts are requiring the most attention first. Because again, if we're looking at something like if we want to become more emotionally masterful and we want to reprogram our brains and we want to learn how to really create software that allows us to just accelerate and level up in life, but we have no gas in the tank and the battery is drained, it's going to take a long time. It's going to be repetitive. A lot of my clients have tried therapy, coaching, plant medicine, meditating, self-help, and they're still somehow feeling like something is missing and they don't know what it is, or they're struggling. To a lot of the really high performing clients that I work with all over the world, they want to bridge that gap between achievement and fulfillment. So yeah, I would love to sit with any of you for an hour and to see if we can sort of kickstart your evolutionary mastery.
Yeah, and I highly suggest to pick up on this opportunity. Experiencing you firsthand, it's probably one of the best things that you can do for yourself. All right, if you have any questions, you can also leave them in show notes. There will be a link, because eventually we will get to Q&A with Sandy as well, where we can answer literally any questions that you're going to give us. And yeah, this was really great. I have more clarity on vehicle of consciousness, and hopefully everybody listening has as well. So we will see you next week. Thank you for listening.
Thanks so much, Astra.